Hi, my name is Ed Johnson, and you're watching Making with an Edge. Thanks for stopping by. Hi, in this video, I would like to share a combination dice storage box and dice tower for rolling the dice that I designed in Fusion 360 for 3D printing. And the backstory on this is my daughter's family and her husband's brother and their family and friends all like to play some Dungeons and Dragons. And my son-in-law's brother shared a TikTok video that he found that I can pop up here for you. This is actually just a screenshot. It's not the actual video. But somebody had designed and shared this combination dice box and dice tower that he did on his CNC, and it's a pretty cool design. The dice store in that slot on the side, and then when the cover is put on there, everything fits, and take the cover off, put it in the slot in the back side there, and you have a dice tower. So I thought, well, I can take a crack at modeling this, so I did, and what I came up with was this. And I basically tried to mimic what the guy who had designed for the CNC. Part of the problem is I ran out of filament right toward the end of the print, but it got far enough that I could put the thing together and test it. So I have my tab, I have my slot, and first problem was it was a little tight on the tolerances, so that's easy to fix. And then the other issue is I only did like I think it was a 15-degree angle here, and so when I was trying to drop dice, it works okay, but I was having inconsistent results with dice popping out of the track and actually hitting the edge here because you can see the bottom doesn't actually line up properly with it isn't centered on the tray where the dice should end up. So anyway, to make a long story short, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, I can do this a little differently and maybe have the dice storage here and have the dice tower be a little bit shorter. So that's what I did. So what I came up with was a design like this, where the cover fits like so, and slot in the back, and then again, I still had my tolerances too tight. But the idea with this one is the dice then would be stored in this section here. And then because I had that problem with the dice popping out of the track, I designed a cover that can actually just slide right on. And then it fits so when the cover is closed, the whole thing can be stored with the dice in the tray. And so this actually worked quite well. And other than being a little noisy because it's plastic, it works pretty good. And so I wanted to improve upon this a little bit more, and so what I did is I kind of went back to the drawing board and decided to design it from scratch a second time and make it fully parametric in Fusion. So what I did is I generally in a set of D&D dice you have 7 dies, and the D20 is the largest. So oops, sorry, you can't really see. So the D20 is the largest. So what I did is in my model is I based the whole dimension of the whole box off the one die, the size of the D20. So you go into your parameters, set this size to whatever you want, and it will shrink and grow this box proportionately so it'll comfortably house these dice. So that's how that works. And then, yeah, tolerances could be just a little tighter, so there's a little bit more of a friction fit here, but it really does work pretty well, other than being a little fumbly to put the thing back together. So I feel a little silly here, but we'll get it. There we go. So I'll set that aside, and then this was actually just to show you this is the final version that I'm sharing. I'll have the Fusion source for this. So this one actually, I kind of went the other way. I did, I'm calling this my Goldilocks project because that one was too tight. This one is too loose, and I think the model, even though I haven't printed it yet, I kind of split the difference, and it should be just right. But yeah, so this works really well. Dice fall, they tumble. I did a couple of different versions of the cover. I did a hex one and a circular one. So You can choose which one you like, but they keep the dice from flying out of there if you're rolling, and yeah, it works quite well. So take your cover off. I'm going to set that aside. So let's scoot over to Fusion and take a look at what we've got going there. So let me minimize this. And so I have the model open here, and I've just at the home position in my timeline. So the first thing I did actually was, and I have this currently suppressed. I'm going to unsuppress these features. So I went and found a bunch of STLs for the various dies. I think I can't remember if I got these on GrabCAD or Thingiverse, but I just imported the STLs so I could get I did this more for rendering and kind of a visualization. I don't expect anyone would want to 3D print these dice, but I brought them in so they could be used for rendering and taking some screenshots. So I'm going to resuppress that because we don't really need that to show you what's going on. So basically, I'm going to scroll ahead to here. You can see this is the base and the cover that are modeled, and I'm going to hide the base, and I can scroll this around so you can see, as I just showed you in the real sample I printed, this is all modeled up. I'm not going to get into the details because it'll make the video way too long of how I actually modeled this. I will tell you that to get the user parameters to work properly, I was really struggling with that when things were scaling. And what I ultimately ended up doing after the umpteenth revision is I went back and kind of put everything on one sketch here. So I extruded the base, the cover, the inserts that cover up the dice track here. I sketched everything in one sketch so that when parameters are changed, everything scales on this sketch, and the extrusions based on those do as well. So probably not best practices, but it worked, and it wasn't super complicated for this model. I did make a copy of this top because I wanted to have two versions of the cover. So at this point, I just have the two copies, but my intent was to leave one as a blank or one that you can embellish yourself. And then this other one on the right here, I ended up adding a Dungeons and Dragons logo. So if you do use this, please don't sell it because Wizards of the Coast don't appreciate their intellectual property and logos and things being used in that way. But I think it's fair use to include it in this model because I just found the SVG from their website and used it in here. So most of what you see is just some aligned steps here and then some other. So I went ahead and created next the insert that covers up the track here, and then I moved that off to the side. And then I created the second one in the hex shape, which is here. And then I moved that one off to the side. And then this last grouping you see here, if you hover over it, this is the logo. So this is where I brought in the SVG, and I located it on the face here and then did an extrusion to engrave that. So the way this whole model works, just to show you here, if you open up the user parameters, and I have it pinned to my toolbar on top, the other way to get at it is under Modify, Change Parameters. And so you can see the list of parameters here. Let me try to arrange this. So maybe I'll close the browser and bring this over a little bit. There we go. There, this should work, I think. Yeah, we don't need this column as wide. Okay. So I've only got a handful of parameters here, and like I mentioned earlier, the whole scale of this thing is based on the die size at the top here. And I can widen this a little bit so you can read the comments. So 25, I think, is a pretty standard size. I know they can, like a D20 in some sets might get up to 30 millimeters or so. So you can come in here and just change the one parameter, and you can watch. It'll take a minute to recalculate here, but you can see how that scaled everything up. Now the one thing, and I'll show you in here in a minute how to fix it, the one thing I haven't figured out is when I'm changing sizes with parameters, how to keep the logo centered on on the cover here, and I can't get it to scale as well. So if I make it really big, like, you know, say for some reason you want to have a huge dice box and tower and you take it up to 50, you can see that it's showing a warning down here, because basically what happened is our SVG is no longer even intersecting the cover here. And then you can also see we've got a couple things that need to be moved and rearranged. I think that's these two moves here. We should probably create a little more air in there. Make sure these don't overlap when we scale it up. Oop, I did that one. I gotta do this one. There. So if we expand this group and we see it's trying to do an extrusion for a sketch that it can't see. So if we go to sketches here, I've got the logo. So the logo is actually, because we made it so big, the logo is on the other model. It's not on the one that it was originally linked to. So the short version of how to fix this, I might as well show it since I've got the example right here. I'm going to cancel this extrusion. So if we turn on this sketch, we just need to relocate it here. So I'm going to change to a top view, and I'm going to edit this sketch. So if we highlight all of the elements of this SVG and do a right click and move, and we can kind of reposition this thing and get it centered back in here. It's going to be a little pokey because of all the vertices on this SVG. So that's roughly centered. We can hit OK to finish the move. And it should fix, when we finish the sketch, it should fix our extrusion here, which it did. But the other issue here is we'd probably like that logo to be a little bit bigger. So if we go back in and edit the sketch again, we can go in here and highlight all of this, highlight the entire logo, and then we can go modify sketch scale. And it's going to default to a it's going to do a proportionate scaling, and one is think of it as one is 100%. So we want to make this bigger. So for example, if we wanted it double in size, we would make this a 2. And then we can end up moving this later, but you can see that might be a little bit, it might not be too big, but I'm going to take it to like 1.8. That looks pretty good for size, and I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to go back and move this again. I missed a vertex there. There we go. So now I'm going to right click and move. And I'm just going to grab this and reposition it. And I'm just going to eyeball this here. You can do some inspection later, you know, to see if you exactly got it centered, or maybe draw a reference line here, but that should be pretty close. So that's how you fix it if you have if you do want to scale this from the 25mm scale that I distributed this as. So again, we'll give this a second to recalculate, and if we hide our sketch, yeah, you can see that that's properly engraved and looks pretty good. Okay, so back to our parameters. I'm going to reset this to 25, and we'll see how it breaks it in again. And if I show my sketches, you can see that because of the scale, it blew it totally out of there again. So the other thing you can do, which I'm going to do here just to get it back, is you can just use the undo. And one tip, in case you're not aware of this, I'm so used to using Control-Z, I didn't really realize you could do it so easily here. If I want to go back multiple steps on the undo, sorry, slip of the mouse there. But we can take this all the way back to, I'm going to try it right here. So it's walking back all those steps and back to what kind of when I started the video, or started the explanation of what was going on here. So that, and it also includes any changes to parameters we made. So we should be back to the original 25 millimeter and the other settings. And just to walk through these other parameters while I have it here. So there's a wall, the wall width, which is the width of the vertical walls going up and down on both the cover and the base. The cover thickness is separate from the bottom thickness. And the cover thickness is also used to determine the thickness of the slot in the, you know what, I'm going to try to, there we go, make this more visible. The cover thickness also determines the thickness of the slot that the cover slides into. For obvious reasons, it needs to be wide enough. But the reason I kept it separate is I'm thinking, you know, 2 millimeter walls work pretty good for the sides, or even probably even a little thinner. I don't know how, you don't want to get too wimpy with the cover because that's going to take a little heat, especially if you have metal dice, like I have for the, what I demoed earlier. They're pretty heavy, and you don't want that tab snapping. So you know, I think a 3 or maybe even 4 millimeter thickness would be really good, is good for the cover. And then the bottom thickness, I just made it the same as the walls. You know, you may want it a little beefier. I think, you know, that's not as important. And then the taper angle is the angle at which this slot goes in. And in my first rendition, I think 15 is too shallow. And for this model, I think the ones I printed were at 25, which was a good angle. You're not really going to see a lot change here, but that's in this slot here. If I tweak our view a little bit so you can see the bottom of it, and now I'll make it a 30-degree angle, and we should see that change right here. Yep. So you can see it's a little bit steeper angle. And I will point out, you know, you can go crazy and make it, you know, if you want 45 degrees, it'll work, but it's going to end up it's going to start cutting through the inside of the cover. It should never cut through the backside because it does the extrusion from this face at whatever angle you choose. So if you take it to, you know, 60 degrees where it's laying pretty flat, you can see that slot's cutting through into the face, and which is fine. It's not going to cause a problem with functionality. It just looks a little funky. So, hey, Future Ed here. I just had to interject. I totally blew by the clearance setting here. I found that 0.3 was too loose, and I think it was 0.15 was a little too tight. So I'm distributing this with a 0.2, which should be pretty good for most, and you can tweak it up or down from there as needed. Anyway, that's the way this works. I hope you enjoy it, and I think I'm going to wrap things up here. Oh, the one thing I would mention, I was going to show the D&D logo that I found. I just brought that into Inkscape and made an SVG out of it. I found it as a bitmap. I think it was a ping image. And then I converted it to SVG, and that makes it scalable, so you can bring it into Fusion. So what I did is I brought this in, and then I basically extruded the what you see as the white line here. And again, this is copyrighted by Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Dungeons and Dragons. So if you're going to use this, give them due credit, and don't sell your work with their stuff on it, because that's not nice. So use the blank, make your own unique design. You know, you don't have to use this for Dungeons and Dragons, obviously. You know, maybe you want to stick your Yahtzee game in here and use it for that. It's pretty flexible, and hopefully using the parameters, you can like I say, scale it up or down, and you know, even design your own dice game for keeping the kids busy in the back seat on a road trip. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, you know where the comments are, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks again for checking it out. Oh my God, I practiced this 1,000 times so I wouldn't fumble this on camera. And look at me go. All right.